All right, we're on the record.
Council agenda, Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, Township Council agenda meeting of September 3rd, 2019.
Introduction, posting of notice. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the Municipal Building on December 19th, 2018, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record and the Newark Star Ledger on December 27, 2018, and was forwarded by fax to other local newspapers and local radio stations on December 19, 2018. Council meetings are videotaped and aired on Cablevision Public Access Channel 21 at 11 a.m. on Sundays and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net.
Please rise for flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. DePiero?
Here.
Ms. Grignani?
Present.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Carriffy?
Here.
Also in attendance are Business Administrator Keith Kazmark, Mayor Michael Soriano, CFO Ann Cucci, Township Attorney Jim Lott, and Township Clerk Colette Madden. Council President, we have a quorum. You may begin.
Thank you. Upcoming meetings, September 17th, 7 p.m., regular meeting, October 1st, 7 p.m., agenda meeting. Approval of minutes, presentations, reports. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Council President. This week is Constitution Week, and we have present with us here today the Daughters of the American Revolution. This is an organization that's been around in the United States since 1890, so that's 129 years. And they've had members in the United States, probably about 950,000 members. Currently, they have about 185,000 members in the United States, and there's 3,000 chapters in all 50 states. Prominent living members include Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth, former First Lady Rosalind Carter, and astronaut Margaret Seddon. So the Daughters of the American Revolution was founded after the Sons of the American Revolution voted to exclude women from their membership. And the women decided we are important and important to American history as well. And let's keep in mind, one of the founding members was George Washington's great-grandniece as well. I'd like to read this proclamation into the record from the front, but first I would like to call up from our local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Elaine Dudek, Ruth Westerfield, and Eileen White. This proclamation reads as such: whereas September 17, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas the Constitution is the world's longest surviving written charter of government, marking the United States of America as the world's most enduring beacon of liberty, freedom, and democracy, and whereas the drafters of the Constitution bravely enshrined in our national spirit a commitment to the rights of all people at a time when totalitarianism gripped the world, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to the profound document and its memorable anniversary and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Michael Soriano, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm their beliefs and the ideals that the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms and guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Thank you so much. Oh, the microphone. Thank you so much. All right, thank you for coming. And last but not least, next week, Wednesday, September 11th, at 8:30 in the morning, outside the construction entrance here to Town Hall, we will have a brief ceremony commemorating the lives lost on September 11, 2001. The public is invited, so please be here. We're starting promptly because there will be a bell ringing to recognize the time that both buildings were struck. Thank you very much, Mr. Council President. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Township Council?
Nothing to report.
I have nothing.
I would just like to start off by apologizing to any members of the public that showed up last week for a special slash emergency meeting that was called for by the mayor. Was not called for by myself or by the council vice president. It was called for without consultation with any of the council members. Obviously, the majority of the council members were not able to attend that meeting, but the meeting was still held and no one showed up. I believe Ms. Peterson called in from vacation. I would also like it on the record that this meeting was called for in violation of Parsippany's local ordinance for special meetings and emergency meetings.
Council President, I
ahead,
think I would
Mr.
have
Hunt.
to respectfully disagree with you. The requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and the requirements of the Township Ordinance have been satisfied with respect to notice of the meeting.
Okay, well, I'm going to dispute that because I have our local ordinance, and it is in strict violation of our local ordinance, okay? Because it says, special meetings, the mayor or council president may call a special meeting whenever either deems it in the public interest, and the council president shall call a special meeting upon the request in writing of a majority of the council members. The request and call for such special meeting shall be filed with the clerk at least 48 hours, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays, before the time in which the special meeting was called, and the clerk shall forthwith deliver copies thereof to each council member at his residence. That meeting was called for over a weekend, I believe, that did not meet the 48 hours. So it is in violation of the township code.
Again, Mr. President, I would respectfully disagree. The ordinance is inconsistent with the state statute governing the Open Public Meetings Act. 48 hours notice is required. That's referenced in the township code as well.
Okay.
48 hours notice was given.
And doesn't it say that the meeting must be called for by the council president
The
in the open public's meeting?
No, the meeting may be requested by the mayor. The mayor made a request for a meeting. There was no meeting because there was a failure to obtain a quorum.
Okay, but that was known ahead of time.
How are we to know that ahead of time?
Well,
Go ahead.
I for one notified the clerk that I would be unavailable due to personal reasons. I received that notice at 11:31 on Saturday morning for a meeting on Tuesday, so.
That's the first thing I have. Secondly, I know all of the council members were emailed some information in reference to an employee for the township that happens to be friends with Mr. Kazmark, who it appears was given health benefits prior to the 60 to 90 day wait period, as every other single employee in this town has had to do. They've had to wait 60 to 90 days, but this individual was given insurance 26 days into his employment. What are the ramifications for that? Since every other township employee has had to wait the 60 to 90 days, except for this individual.
Mr. President, I would respectfully request that we refrain from discussing employment matters of employees who have not received the Rice notice. I will also indicate that the township has the discretion to approve a waiver of the handbook requirement. My understanding is that that's what happened here.
Okay, but wouldn't the council have to approve that waiver? You
That's
mean
a
to tell
fu-
me that Mr.
that's-
Kazmar can just wave a wand and say, boom, waiver?
That's a function of administration, including the mayor.
Okay. I'd like it noted on the record. I guess that's what happened. I have nothing else.
Council President, do you wish for that employee to be Rice noticed for the next meeting? so
No,
that it could be talked
no,
about in
that's
closed
okay.
session?
No, that's okay.
Mr. President, I have two things for the agenda tonight. The first is you'll note that we have 18 ordinances that relate to our affordable housing settlement that are on for introduction tonight. They will, of course, be read by title as required by law, and the notice will be provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and the Municipal Land Use Law. In addition, the public hearing on all of the ordinances will be held on October 1st. I would also request that we go into closed session to discuss the Carifi litigation immediately following the final report with respect to township engineering.
Okay. Business Administrator, Mr. Kazmar?
Thank you, Council President. First, I just want to extend my thanks to the mayor, the members of the council, and the administrative staff here at the township for their indulgence and their patience over the past couple of weeks with regard to my daughter's medical condition. I appreciate your patience and your cooperation. Secondly, today's my first day back from that. Just want to report out that we had. Just want to report out that we had an auction, an online auction. This is our first auction through MuniBid. The assets of the township were sold online, and we reaped approximately $40,000 worth of revenue from that online auction. In addition to that, at the council meeting on the 17th, I will have two items for executive session. One is we are very close to a settlement with the blue-collar supervisors and their collective bargaining unit, and the second will be with regard to the Kemper Sports Management contract and Knoll finances at the golf course. Thank you.
Thank you. Township Clerk?
No report at this time, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. Township offices, committees, reports?
None at this time. I have nothing.
I'd like to state for the record that the Parsippany Chamber of Commerce has added over 100 members since January 1st, which is very good for our local businesses. And also, they are sponsoring on Monday, September 9th, at the Hilton, a Taste of Parsippany. They have 31 restaurants and over 25 businesses that will be offering their products. So it's a very good thing if anybody has the time and would like to go to a good event. That's Monday the 9th.
Mr. Council President,
Yes.
may I? I want to recommend to you and highly suggest that we Rice notice the employee that you spoke of. The administration has absolutely nothing to hide on this and would open a, especially if the employee is okay with it, to discuss it in public. There's nothing to hide. I think there's nothing better than sunlight. Best disinfectant there is.
I don't think there's anything to hide. I'm just, the other 2,000 employees we have that have were never afforded that.
I think we could discuss this openly, but again, legally, I cannot unless we Rice notice the employee properly. It's at your discretion.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary. If anybody else wants to.
No. Engineering report. Engineering.
Okay, engineering report, Edgewood Court reconstruction project. Construction is substantially complete. The contractor is working with the sewer department on unforeseen issues with the sanitary sewer lateral repairs. Final paving will take place once the sanitary work has been completed. No action required. 2019 road resurfacing curb and sidewalk program. Curb and sidewalk work will continue with a few more work weeks. Most of the concrete work is complete. Road milling and paving has started, but got delayed due to problems with the equipment. Work has started again and will continue into the middle of September. No council action required. Old Bluefield Ave, Phase 2 reconstruction project. Construction is substantially complete. Only minor punch list items remain and will be completed in September. No council action required. Drainage issues, engineering and the Public Works Department are still actively investigating numerous drainage issues. Groundwater is still very high, and we have had numerous issues with groundwater as mitigated through the ground surface, particularly in the area between Ashwood Place and Rockaway Place. The other areas in town with similar problems are in the Lake Intervale area, as well as Rainbow Lakes. No council action required. Community Rating System, CRS program, we are currently working with a consultant and the New Jersey DEP on getting back into the CRS program. This will provide discounts on flood insurance policies based on the level of activities in which the township participates. No council action is required.
Executive session resolution. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Council is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, and whereas the Township wishes to discuss attorney-client privilege, Karifi litigation, and whereas minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires confidentiality, the minutes can be made public. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills that the public be excluded from this meeting. Motion to adjourn into closed session.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. McCarthy. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
I see no reason to go in a closed session for this topic.
Okay,
I vote no.
Ms. Grignani,
No.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson.
Yes, and I would say that by having this by putting Mr. Allott, our town attorney, in the position to have to discuss this information on the record, I would encourage my counterparts to reconsider.
Okay, so we have a Council President, Mr. Paul Karifi, is recused. So at this particular time, we have a 2-2 vote. The motion fails.
Just advice for the Council Vice President acting as presiding officer. I'll note for the record that Council was advised that we have Mr. Parikh here as well as Mr. Renaud. Mr. Parikh is our Special Litigation Counsel in Karifi matters. Mr. Renaud currently represents the Township in Karifi 3 and 4. It's my advice that it would be imprudent for the Council to take action on Resolution 177 without hearing from Township attorneys in closed session. I would respectfully request that we move into closed session to have the Council reconsider its vote.
Well, based on Mr. Lott's statements, does the council want to consider their decision not to go into closed session?
I do not wish to reconsider.
Neither do I.
I'll note for the record, Vice President, that this action is being taken against my advice.
Okay, bids taken. July 31st, Powder Mill Pump Station upgrades. August 7th, rental of heavy equipment. August 15th, Smithfield Park Phase 2 improvements to be taken. September 18th, Lake Hiawatha Water Main Replacement Phase 1. This time I'll entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Floor is open for the public on any matter.
Okay, if you do come up, you'll be given 5 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Julia Peterson, 25 Old Parsippany Road. I was doing a little research, and I found an ordinance that passed in 2014, 2014-28 or :28, and it's an ordinance in which the council allocated land, municipal land, near Smithfield, a municipal plot that would be suitable for a very large highway sign. I made copies for everybody, so I'll pass them out.
You submit them to the clerk.
I was surprised because I know there was a lawsuit against all the town because they felt that large billboards weren't appropriate in Parsippany, and I imagine this was to settle that complaint, although I don't remember. I don't remember the exact thing that happened. The reason I bring it up is because I'm still concerned about a very large billboard that is proposed near our house. It turns out that we are 2 feet outside of the notification zone. So we won't even hear about the notification unless I come every week or every 2 weeks and make sure that the Board of Adjustment isn't hearing it at that meeting. The other piece of document I have for you, I wanted to think about how big a 40-foot high, 48-foot wide illuminated billboard would actually be. So I happen to have a diagram of our house that was made in 1930s in the WPA project, the Historic American Building Survey. It turns out that this bulletin board would be taller than our house and wider than our house. So needless to say, I'm still concerned about this. I know it's not even the council's venue because it's really not your thing. And I know that there's more concern about this. I think there should be, because I think basically all of us want to live without billboards like this. There is one in Denville, if anybody's interested in seeing what one looks like. It's by the farmer's market in Denville. Anyhow, that's my plea to you today is to remember that maybe in Parsippany we don't need this kind of thing. And as I say, I know this isn't strictly your responsibility. I'll give Mr. Mullin the picture of the house.
May I respond to that?
If anybody
Let
wants to
me see if she's
I'm
done.
leaving a copy of the ordinance and a copy of the picture of the house up here, so if the public wants to see it, they can.
Mrs. Peterson, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. DePiero.
Well, I was here during all those lawsuits, and the court ordered we could not ban billboards in Parsippany. So we decided to provide some zoning by court order, and so we provided a zone on Route 280 near Sharkey's Dump. They didn't want to put any billboards over there. The Holiday Inn, which was hurting for funds, I think, was volunteering their property facing Route 80 to put one. The property you're talking about, I think, is on Grange Road?
Yes.
Okay. That was when a family owned the property by Route 80.
Mm-hmm.
And then we acquired that property and it became part of Smith Field. So I don't know if it's still going to go there. But the one that was, the other location was right here outside of Town Hall on Route 287. And that's going to be one that the information on the billboard changes.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have an emergency in town, we can provide information on that billboard to alert drivers to stay away from some area or whatever the message should be. But we were required to provide some billboard zoning someplace.
Right,
It was not something we wanted to do.
right.
The question at hand is the property in question,
Is that property still available for billboard use, and wouldn't the town benefit from the income from it as opposed to giving the income to a private owner? The other, as I say, the other concern I have is the lighting from that concern already is strong enough that during the winter, now during the summer, we have screening from deciduous trees. During the winter, I can read in our upstairs bedrooms from the lighting from Powder Mill Towing. So I can't imagine how bright it will be to have a 40-foot high, 48-foot wide sign, which actually, and we're probably the only property that it impacts, except for people in Hills of Troy, and I imagine they won't be too happy about it either. And as I say, just want to I'm building awareness about this. This is not on the agenda yet, but it's coming.
Do we
Thanks.
know if there is any restriction on lighting?
Well,
you know, I
there's
mean,
there's a lot of restrictions about signs, but they don't necessarily apply to this kind of sign.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So does the fact that it lights up have some other ramifications?
Well, it's supposed to be screened if it lights up, but
There
the
are
whole
federal requirements for billboards aligning highways. and such have federal requirements, a glare.
But the whole purpose of it is to be able to read it on Route 80. It's
Right.
not supposed to be read from Littleton Road, it's supposed to be read on Route 80. And that section of Route 80 is where that one lane comes off onto 287, and people wait and start forming the line for that up at the top of Fox Hill, really. So it's a very odd placement for the sign. Thank you.
So
Thank
just
you.
further to that, as Councilmember DiPiero notes, the township has been involved in litigation with a billboard company. We were ordered, I believe, to do two things. One is to identify alternative locations, and the other is to provide appropriate zoning in those locations. We've already looked at some alternative locations. Ordinance 214-28, I'm not familiar with, so I'll check that site. I believe that it may have been excluded because of other NJDOT requirements not being met, but I'll confirm that. With respect to your notice issue, with respect on the zoning board, although you're not within the 200-foot notice radius, you can always write the zoning board secretary and ask to receive notice.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that you go ahead and do that so you get notice of the application.
And you can do that for a specific application?
Yes, you can, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right, well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicholas Homiak from Lake Hiawatha. Is it appropriate to say something about the Captain Karifi situation? I don't understand what I witnessed here in the last council meeting. It was the inappropriate flip-flop. We had an attorney before that lied, cheated, and stole from us, Mr. Inglesino, and he was followed blindly. I remember him calling a closed session, and everybody clicked their heels and they went in there. There was no discrepancies. But this man betrayed this community, and it says here he's being sued by James Karifi. I want to know why the township of Parsippany should be suing him for the money, for the waste, not only for what he did to Captain Karifi, but for what he did to the people of this town with the water view. He dishonored and betrayed the no rezone vote. It was his job when he was in court in Morristown that day to back this community up. I was there. He didn't. He dismissed the developer without prejudice, allowed the developer to come back, and all of a sudden, presto changeo, musical chairs. We have a new council. But the work, the hard work that Dave Kaplan and his group went through was betrayed. So much for grassroots democracy. Mr. Inglesino, again, and we paid for this. And the Aurora Security Company was one of the biggest shams that I guess I could witness on a local level in my capacity. The whole thing is a disgrace, and it should, Mr. DiPiero, you should have spoke up a long time ago, and you didn't. You let all this happen. And it wasn't just Captain Karifi, like I said. That man betrayed this whole community. And we should be suing as a collective, as a class action grievance, Aurora, Mayor Barbario, and James Inglesino, along with Captain Karifi, for the money they stole from the taxpayers of this town, including the $3.7 million for that lousy buffer zone up there that could have been zoned. We had to buy it back from the developer. And we couldn't get money we could have had that whole 26 acres like Mayor Barbario promised. Even people we had running for the council in support of all that. And then when they got in with Mr. Inglesino, they had a sudden mind change. You can't just listen. If a person on my level could know that that man wasn't telling the truth about things, people on your level should have been up on it, and you weren't. And I don't know what's going on. But to disrespect Mr. Lott, the attorney, all of a sudden, just like that, like I said, when Mr. Inglesino He was walking all over the place. I think the whole thing's a disgrace.
James Griffey, Parsippany. I wasn't really prepared to speak. However, after
Mr. Griffey,
seeing,
just need you to speak into the mic, please.
after seeing 2 weeks ago the meeting, I would just personally like to say thank you, Mr. DePiero, thank you, Mrs. McCarthy, and thank you, Mrs. Grigani. 6 years and 5 months is a long time. I appreciate you putting an end to this. Also, I'd like to acknowledge and thank all my supporters that are here today. I would turn around and face you, but I don't want to get cut off. As a father, I try to instill 2 principles in my life. That is, always remember where you came from, never forget who your friends are. And after seeing everybody here tonight, I appreciate you and showing my son who's here tonight a valuable lesson and how true that is. Thank you very much. I see in this agreement there's something about a settlement. I have no problem. We look forward to seeing this and ending this chapter. As soon as you can get it to us, I'd be more than happy to execute it and end this part of my life. So thank you again.
Ken Dolsky, 21 Winfield Drive. I'd like to make a couple of comments about the fair share housing settlement and the information that's been given to the public. I believe this is a very, very complicated situation. It may not appear like that on the surface, but I was able to get a copy of the fair share housing settlement, read it over, spent a couple of hours with Mr. Peluso talking about it, trying to figure it out. Went to the session, the information session that was held with by the planning board. I listened to that, and I realized I still didn't understand certain aspects of it. So one general comment is, I know you've done your due diligence, and you have put the information out in public as appropriate. But don't think that because you did that, everybody understands what's going on. It's not easy, and I think there were comments that were presented at the planning board that were not true. I'm just saying there was discussion and comments back and forth that I had to have a separate meeting with Ms. London and Mr. Snikes and ask them some questions before I fully understood what the heck was happening. And so in particular, the main issue that was confusing to me was the idea that we thought we had worked our obligation down to the RDP, the realistic development potential of 857. However, that's not true. Parsippany's obligation is, I think, 1,314 units. And the difference between that and the RDP of 857 is the unmet need. And some of that need now has to be met in this round by the use of, amongst other things, the overlay zones. And I couldn't figure out what the hell the overlay zones were just from reading the settlement. And fortunately, from talking to Mr. Snikes and Ms. London, I got a better understanding of it. And I understand now how they're going to work, how the housing is going to be laid out. And I came here expecting to see individual ordinances so that I could see exactly what's going to happen in Arlington Plaza, which is the overlay zone that abuts my property. And so that brings me up to brings the second issue. And I understand that you have a whole package of ordinances, and the logistics of getting them all out and getting them available to the public is a challenge. So I'm not saying, that's a problem. I'm not faulting anybody for that. But I'm saying you should make those available and let the public know, especially for people who are living around these overlay zone areas, that there's a separate ordinance that describes how that zone is going to be used in combination with, if it's, a mixed use, like, having commercial buildings or retail buildings and residential property, and that the people who live near those ought to be, you ought to make an extra special effort to make sure they all understand what's going on. And the fact is that there's, I guess, between the 1,314 required or obligation and the 857 realistic, there's an unmet need of about 457 or some odd units. And those are in round 3. Those are not, as I understood at the planning board meeting, going to be in round 4 starting in 2025. Those are here and now, and the only difference between those units and the 857 is that the town can't guarantee to the court that all of those are actually going to be developed.
1 minute.
So, and it depends on the builders in those different zones and what they want to do with their property. So all of that was really hard to get out of the information that was given out at those at the planning board meeting. And I'm willing to bet you nobody understands what's going on. And Mike, I think the statement at the planning board meeting that some of the overlay zones were going to be developed in the next round starting in 2025. I mean, that's what I heard, and that's wrong. That's absolutely not the case. They could all be developed right now. So I encourage you to make a bigger effort to educate people, especially those people living near the overlay zones, as to what's going on and to make those ordinances available for all those people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, I'll note for the record that all the ordinances will be available in the clerk's office.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the reason they're not available here is I'll have Ken hold up the packet he received. It's a book, so I couldn't have all these books. Thank you, Mr. Olsky, I appreciate that. So that's the reason why we couldn't have that out there. But if you guys would like it, just please come see me right after the meeting, and I'll make sure I get it to you tonight. All right, thank you.
My name is Bob Venezia. I live at 102 Brooklawn Drive. And tonight I'd like to make a few comments about the motion that was made to pay James Carifi for contractual monies that have been held up since his retirement. My first reaction at the meeting was, at the meeting where this was first announced, was to agree with the township attorney, who recommended that the matter should be reserved for closed session because of ongoing litigation. But then I thought, well, this case has been discussed in closed sessions for the past 6 years, and nothing happened. Announcing the motion at the public council meeting finally triggered an action that has been long overdue. As indicated by the vote, the motion has bipartisan support of the council. In addition, it has the implied approval of the administration, because it will put an end to what the mayor has described in focus as the Barbario-Inglesino administration's wasteful lawsuits against Captain Carifi. I also believe that the public is more than ready to put this issue to rest. Early on, there was significant public support on both sides of the issue, but as time passed by, I believe that public sentiment began to shift more and more towards settlement. Then, earlier this year, it became very difficult to make a case for continued litigation, given the fact that at a council meeting, it was revealed that in the last 6 years, some 40-plus other officers, including the most recently retired police chief, acted in the same manner as Captain Carifi, but no action was taken against any of them. Both Parsippany and James Carifi have had to expend significant amounts of time and money because of the long, drawn-out litigation process. Now the township can direct those resources to more pressing issues like overdevelopment. I, for one, am glad that everyone can now move on. Thank you.
Pat Patacha, 182 Hawkins Avenue. I have two things to discuss. One, directly to you, Mr. Lott. Last year, you were working on an ordinance about gas stations being close to residential properties. Whatever happened to that?
So that ordinance was deferred for consideration because we were in the midst of a master plan review. That review will probably conclude within the next maybe 3-4 weeks. And I think there'll be recommendations as a result of that new master plan that will address conditional use standards for service stations.
Okay, thank you.
Right. It was part of our larger consideration of a number of changes involving the changes to permitted uses as well as setback distances.
Okay. And my second thing is the Carifi matter. For 6 years, I've stood before you, begging you to settle this. Then you had no right to do what you did back when. The lawsuits that are pending now have nothing to do with this. The man has been out 6 years without this money. What would anybody up there be doing? How would you be feeling? The time is now, the time is right. Please give this man what we owe him and let this matter rest. Please. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else come forward, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Council President, may I for one moment, please?
Well, we have to close the public
Sure,
hearing.
go ahead.
Good. Oh, good.
All I want to say is
Just please state your name and address.
Richard Brzezicki, 8 Forum Court.
Could you speak into the mic, Mr. Przicki?
This matter's been going on for too long, should be resolved. I don't usually come out to these meetings. I wanted to see the council members who I supported and how you're going to support me. Please settle this tonight. Thank you.
Okay, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Grignani, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Floor is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. The Friday after your the introduction, the ham-handed introduction of this motion, which was against protocol, the attorney released a 50-page memo to council and to myself detailing all the aspects of that. Since we cannot do this in a, because we have a deadlock in a closed session, I would ask the council to waive it and release this privileged document to the public, so the public can know exactly what the township attorney has been advising everyone and what the council needs to discuss related to this issue. And I would ask you to do that now. Second, Yeah, we could settle this now. We could settle this tonight. We have the attorney for this here. We have the attorney for the Karifi case. We could go and take care of this right now. That's all I have to say.
All right, moving along with the agenda, ordinances for introduction.
So,
Questions or concerns on it?
at this time, we have approximately, I believe, 18 affordable housing ordinances. Council President, if it's okay,
Yes,
I
go ahead.
apologize.
Yes.
We have 18 affordable housing ordinances that have been placed on the agenda for introduction. In the interests of expediency, I'm going to make a motion and read all 18 by title only. And before I do that, I do want to take a minute to thank my deputy clerk, Leslie Miller. As putting these things together is no easy feat, and to put everything together in one lump sum is not easy. So her doing this and making this happen for us, just want to thank her on the record. So now moving along, if it's okay with everyone, if I can begin reading?
Go ahead.
Okay. Be it resolved that the following ordinances be introduced, read by title, and passed on first reading at the meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills held on September 3rd, 2019, and that said ordinances be further considered for second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held October 1st, 2019 at 7 p.m. prevailing time or soon thereafter as the matter may be reached at the municipal building in said township, at which time all persons interested shall be given the opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinances. Be it further resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance with notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law. Motion for the approval of the above resolution.
Second.
And well, we need a motion first.
Motion first.
Oh, second.
Okay, so motion made by Ms. Grignani, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Motion passes. Ordinance 2019:46, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD-MU zone. Ordinance 2019-47, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD-3A Affordable Housing District Zone. Ordinance 2019-48, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD 3B Affordable Housing District Zone. Ordinance 2019-49, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD 4 Affordable Housing District. Ordinance 2019:50, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD 5 Affordable Housing District Zone. Ordinance 2019-51, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD 6 Affordable Housing District Zone. Ordinance 2019:52, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD 7 Affordable Housing District Zone. Ordinance 2019:53, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new OVL-1 overlay zone. Ordinance 2019:54, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new OVL-2 overlay zone. Ordinance 2019:55, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new OVL-3 overlay zone. Ordinance 2019:56, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new OVL-4 overlay zone. Ordinance 2019:57, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new OVL-5 overlay zone. Ordinance 2019:58, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new OVL-6 overlay zone. Ordinance 2019:59, an ordinance implementing the Township's third round housing plan element and fair share plan consistent with the terms of a settlement agreement reached between the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills and the Fair Share Housing Center in accordance with the New Jersey Fair Housing Act and relevant regulations and policies adopted by the New Jersey Council on Affordable Housing. Ordinance 2000:60, an ordinance implementing the Township's third round housing plan element and fair share plan consistent with the terms of a settlement agreement reached between the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills and the Fair Share Housing Center in accordance with the New Jersey Fair Housing Act and relevant regulations and policies adopted by the New Jersey Council on Affordable Housing. Ordinance 2019:61, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish a new AHD-MU zone. Ordinance 2019:62, an ordinance implementing the township's third round housing plan element and fair share plan consistent with the terms of a settlement agreement reached between the township of Parsippany-Troy Hills and the Fair Share Housing Center in accordance with the New Jersey Fair Housing Act and relevant regulations and policies adopted by the New Jersey Council on Affordable Housing. Ordinance 2019:63, an ordinance to amend Chapter 430 entitled Zoning of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to establish mandatory affordable housing set-aside requirements. And that does it.
That it?
Breathe.
Okay.
Breathe.
So now let's do a roll call vote on all of those. So a motion to introduce these ordinances by title only.
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani.
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy.
Yes.
Ms. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Okay, and Ken, just so you know, the public hearing will be at the next time, and anybody can voice their concerns during the second reading and public hearing when that time comes. I always look forward to it, Ken.
Okay, I'd ask council members to just review the ordinances for second reading and public hearing. See if there's any questions or concerns. Okay, hear none. Move on to the non-consent agenda. Resolutions, Ms. McCarthy.
R 2019-176, approval grant application, electric charging stations. Motion to approve the resolution above.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Mr. DePiero. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. DePiero.
This, oh, go ahead. I just wanted to ask Mr. Lott if,
So again, Council President, I would note that my objection for the record. I will also note that the Resolution 219-177 is a memorialization of an earlier motion of Councilman DePiero at the prior meeting, and that that motion and resolution does not conclusively resolve all of the litigation involving Mr. Carriffy. Now, I understand that Mr. Carriffy, during public comment, made a statement that he's desirous of resolving all the litigation, and the mayor also indicated that we're available tonight to go ahead and consider that request. And I will also note that my advice, which I cannot give in public, but my comment would be that the actions with respect to Resolution 177 taken against my advice potentially compromise the township's position in pending litigation and also jeopardize our insurance coverage. And for those reasons, I would again ask that we retire into closed session so council would have the full benefit of my advice.
okay.
Now, I know that the mayor did indicate that he thought that it would be appropriate for council to waive its privilege, at least with respect to a memorandum that had been prepared by Mr. Parikh about a week ago that more fully addresses these issues.
Is there any council members, any comments?
Oh, I have a comment. The accrued sick leave and vacation days, by contract, has been held up for 6 years. Granted, there was litigation in other areas, but enough is enough. The man is entitled to the money, and I feel it's time to give him the money that we've held back for 6 years.
Good.
I'll again note that the motion offered by Councilman DePiero does not resolve all of the litigation with respect to all the claims that have been made in the various Carriffy litigations.
Acknowledged.
Go ahead, Mr. DePiero.
Now, am I reading this thumbnail view, or do I read the entire Resolution 177?
I would suggest one amendment, and that amendment would be that the resolution include that any payment made to Mr. Carriffy receive the approval of our insurance carriers.
That's not in my resolution.
It's not in your resolution.
No. So again, my question is, do I read the entire resolution or this thumbnail session?
Just read this.
Go ahead.
Good.
I would read the entirety of the resolution, and I'd like council to act on my recommendation to include an explicit reference that any payment be made subject to the approval of our insurance carriers.
Resolution 2019-177. Resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills authorizing the payment to James Carifi unused accrued sick leave with interest. Whereas this motion memorializes the motion approved by the Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills at its August 20th, 2019 meeting, wherein it authorized payment to Captain James Carifi, retired, for his unused accrued time for sick, vacation, and personal days and unused accrued compensatory time, plus interest, collectively the payment. And whereas the Township Council, acting against the advice of the Township Attorney, decided to authorize payment to Captain Carifi notwithstanding pending litigation pertaining to, in part, his claims for the payment of accrued time in the actions captioned below. 1. Captain James Carifi versus Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills et al., docket number MRS L 2938-11. Item 2, James Carifi versus James Barbario, John Inglesino Esquire, Paul Phillips, Aurora Information Security and Risk, LLC. Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills et al., docket number MRS L 003140-14, collectively the litigations. And item 3, James Carifi versus Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, docket number MRS L 1681-18. And whereas there is arbitration proceeding pending before the Public Employment Relations Commission regarding Captain Carifi's employment, which includes the issue of compensation for accrued time, this arbitration is captioned as follows. Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills and PBA Local 131, SOA docket number AR 2019-325, the arbitration. None of that was in my motion 2 weeks ago. Whereas the Township Council desires to memorialize its motion by adoption of this resolution and authorize payment to Captain Carifi for his accrued time to be calculated in an appropriate manner as set forth therein, in exchange for the execution of a satisfactory settlement and release of any and all claims by Captain Carifi for accrued time during his employment with the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Police Department. And whereas any payment made to Captain Carifi for the accrued time is contingent upon certain terms set forth herein. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizes the payment to Captain Carifi subject to the following terms and conditions. 1. The Township Chief Financial Officer is hereby authorized to make the payment to Captain Carifi in the amount of $368,482.02, which the Township shall pay Captain Carifi, the principal. The Township shall also pay to Carifi simple interest, the interest to be paid at 2.25%. The interest to be paid shall be calculated as having commenced as of April 1st, 2013, and shall continue accrual thereafter through the date when final payment is to Captain Carifi. The annual rate of interest was determined utilizing the State of New Jersey Cash Management Refund Rate of Return. Captain Carifi shall submit an acknowledgement that he is in agreement with the amount of the payment as set forth there is no Exhibit A. In exchange for payment as set forth in Exhibit A. Captain Carifi shall execute a settlement and release for any and all claims for compensation for the accrued time alleged in the litigations and arbitration or any other proceedings. The form of said settlement and release shall be satisfactory to the Township Attorney and shall include language that the payment authorized pursuant to this resolution shall not constitute any admission of liability by the Township. 3. That pursuant to the Township's practices governing the payment of accrued leave due to eligible employees, the payment to Captain Carifi as set forth in Exhibit A again, shall occur semi-annually and be made in accordance with the schedule of regular salary payment made to township employees. The first payment to be made within 7 days of adoption of this resolution. Item 4, pursuant to the township's practices governing payment of accrued leave due to eligible employees, any payment to Captain Creepy pursuant to this resolution shall not exceed $131,801, his annual base salary when he retired in any 1 year. The Township Chief Financial Officer shall prepare and file the appropriate certifications for payment. Be it further resolved that the Township Attorney is authorized to negotiate a settlement and release of any and all claims of Captain Creepy related to compensation for the accrued time. Be it further resolved that payment authorized pursuant to this resolution shall not constitute an admission of liability by the Township as to any claims of Captain Creepy has in litigations or in the arbitration. Be it further resolved that all Township officials and employees are hereby authorized and directed to take all action necessary and appropriate to effectuate the terms of this resolution.
Council Vice President?
Yes.
Just with respect to Councilmember DiPiero's comment, I did add reference to the litigations and the arbitration. I think a fair reading of your motion at the council meeting indicated that there was to be a provision for release and settlement.